The Holy Gospel according to Matthew. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. And as he sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." While he was saying these things to them, suddenly a teacher of the synagogue came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died. But come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhage for 12 years came from behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she had said to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at this. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the report of this spread throughout the district. The Gospel of the Lord. Well, there's an interesting point, as interesting as the whole scene is, this interesting point where Jesus tells the Pharisees, you need to go and learn something. Go and find out what this means. He had told them, "Why are you surprised that I'm with the tax collectors and the sinners? Those who are well don't have need of a physician. Those who are sick do." Then the line, "Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." Well, Jesus is actually quoting our first reading from today, from Hosea, chapter 5, verse 15 through chapter 6, verse 6. Let's read that part again. Hosea says, "I will return again to my place until they acknowledge their guilt and seek my face," the Lord is saying. "In their distress, they will beg my favor. Come, let us return to the Lord, for it is he who has torn, and he will heal us. He has struck down, and he will bind us up. After 2 days, he will revive us. On the third day, he will raise us up that we may live before him. Let us know. Let us press on to know the Lord. His appearing is as sure as the dawn. He will come to us like the showers, like the spring rains that water the earth. What shall I do with you, O Ephraim? What shall I do with you, O Judah? Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes away early. Therefore, I have hewn them by the prophets. I have killed them by the words of my mouth, and my judgment goes forth as the light. For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than a burnt offering." Wow. Here are people who thought that by doing the rituals, by visiting the temple, by doing all these religious things, they were going to do right by God. And they said, "Oh, the Lord strikes us down, but he'll rise us up. The Lord has cut us down, but we'll be made whole again." They knew what the love of God meant. They knew what God's love for them was all about. And this is really what the whole book of Hosea is about. It's told in an allegory form where Hosea takes a wife named Gomer. Don't ever do that. Don't ever marry a woman named Gomer. He marries Gomer and she goes off and leads a immoral life, prostitutes herself, Hosea says. And the Lord tells Hosea to go and buy her back. He goes and he retrieves her, brings her back home as his wife again, and she leaves again. And he goes and rescues her again, and she leaves a third time, and he goes and rescues her. It's all an allegory about how the people of God, the people who claim to be God's people, keep running away. And yet, God, through the story Hosea, continually buys us back. No matter how many times we fall aside, no matter how many times we depart and go into another place, God comes for us. An interesting thing is happening in Hosea's time, because it talks about what shall I do with you, O Ephraim, speaking of Israel? What shall I do with you, Judah, referring to the south kingdom? What am I going to do with you? You're not doing what you're supposed to do. You think that you have the temple and everything is going to be fine. You think you have the priesthood and let the priests make the sacrifice. But in Hosea's time, there was already coming to be a split between the actions of the priesthood and the words and actions of the prophets. As far as the prophets were concerned, at least most of them, they thought that the priests were simply functionaries of the government. They were simply acting on behalf of the kingdom, acting as intermediaries who really aren't letting the people know what they should really be doing. They were simply trying to get sacrifices offered by themselves for the people, for others, for people who would hire them. And Hosea says, that's not what the Lord wants at all. I don't want sacrifice. In the book of Amos, who actually came a little bit before Hosea, Amos says the same thing. And he goes, go to your holy places, go to Gilgal and transgress, go to Bethel and multiply your transgressions. Do all those religious things you like to do, because it deflects from what you're really missing. What's missing? That steadfast love. In the New Testament, the word that gets used is agape. In the Hebrew Bible, the word is chesed, and it gets translated rightly as steadfast love. It's a love that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. It's the love of God that no matter what we do in the book of Hosea, no matter how much we depart, no matter how much we follow other gods, no matter how much we follow other ideas, no matter how much we fail in showing loving kindness to others, God still rescues, because God will continue to show steadfast love. no matter what we do. The Greek word agape is the same thing. No matter what we do, God will not forsake. God will not abandon. God will continually bring us back. What do I want? Hosea says, I want steadfast love, not sacrifice. I want you to know the character of God, not burnt offerings. Then Jesus, when he's talking to the disciples or talking to the Pharisees, says the very same thing again. In fact, then he says, go and learn what this means. And then he quotes Isaiah, I desire mercy, which is basically that same steadfast love. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. We sit in church, we come to church, pay offerings, go through the rituals, say the prayers, do the things, take the sacraments, all important for us. But it all means absolutely nothing without us experiencing and expressing steadfast love, agape, that love that will continue to be poured out no matter what happens, no matter if the recipient is deserving or not. Thomas Merton said, when I'm praying for someone, it's nowhere in my responsibility to determine if the person is worthy of love. The only thing I'm called to do is to love. This is what Jesus is telling the Pharisees and his disciples who are in earshot. This is what Jesus would say to us. This is what the Spirit of God would say to us. Learn about mercy and steadfast love. Learn about absolutely unmerited love to be given to others. Learn about reaching out and accepting those who seem to be so unacceptable to us. This is the way that the Spirit would lead us. This is the way that the prophets and Jesus himself had told us. Learn about love. You can never exhaust the subject. Paul writes a whole wonderful chapter in 1 Corinthians, chapter 13, when he talks about what agape looks like. And you get to the one section, and he says, agape is patient. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not insist on its own way. And yet that's exactly what we do. We think we have found the right way, and we think it's the right way for everyone, and we wind up insisting on that. Absolutely against the teachings of God. Learn about mercy. Learn about loving kindness. Learn about steadfast love. Learn about the nature of God. And practice that. God give us the grace to do it, the understanding to follow it, and the love to really exercise it. And thanks be to God. Amen.